Throw away your television. Another one of those quirky jam sessions where Chad and Flea were just banging it out, and I heard words in my head and went up to the mic and started screaming about throwing away your television, which is kind of a hypocritical statement because I watch television, but sometimes it's good to be hypocritical. Sometimes that works. So it's really kind of a metaphor for throwing away anything in your life that's taking away your imagination or stealing your energy or telling you how to behave, instead of you finding and figuring out, what you want to look like, how you want to act, who you want to be. You've got this television set deciding those things for you, and that's not a good thing.
There's the sample and hold filter effect that I use. When I was a little kid, it was something that I used to hear Frank Zappa using on his records. He had a thing called a Oberheim voltage control filter effect, and I really wanted one, but it's not a very common effect. It's not something you would see very often. So I would read about him using it in the magazines, and I would hear it sounding so incredible, and I never owned one. And then recently, Line 6 put out this uh, filter, the virtual sort of filter thing where it sort of simulates the sounds of like 15 different kinds of filter effects that you can get. And one of the things that they're simulating is the Oberheim voltage control filter. So I used it on that song. When I first got it, I was back to like playing the way I did when I was a teenager, like imitating Frank Zappa and stuff. Pretty much just imitating his guitar playing was the only thing I knew how to do on it, and I thought I've got to do something different with this and do something new so I can use it on a record in some kind of a way that doesn't sound like an imitation of Frank Zappa. So I figured, I ended up using it on Throw Away Your Television, and everybody liked it a lot.
Can't Stop is a song that you just really want to raise your knees up high into the air to and feel the funk and just get deep into the groove, into that sharp, angular groove. And God bless the Gang of Four.
Can't Stop, possibly the last song written in rehearsal. It was the most unfinished thing that we took into the studio. I think it actually might have been written on the very last day of rehearsal. And it was something that John and Chad and I were just going nuts. I walked into a room where John and Chad had been rocking out together, probably playing Van Halen songs or something, and then they kind of switched into this improvisation, and I started making up rhythms that sounded really good to everybody, and we just played it nonstop, sort of trance-like, for about 20 minutes, and then Flea showed up and joined in, and after the jam, we all looked at each other and we said, we need something like this on our record. So we took it into the recording studio, recorded it, and I just made up nonsensical words for the initial recording process, knowing that eventually, along with the other 30 songs or so, that I'd get around to finding the right words, because I knew what it was called, I knew what it was going to be about, but I also knew that it was very wordy, sort of in the vein of Give It Away, and that I would have to sit down and spend hours wordsmithing until I found every little note, rhythm, idea, and word that needed to be said. And that took longer than I thought, because it wasn't until I was in New York on my way to Rome that I ended up singing the vocal on that song. So it was the very last thing that I sang for this record, and it almost didn't happen. But I knew that it would. I knew that it needed to happen, and in the end, it's one of my favorite things on the whole record. This Is the Place is a song we love. It's kind of dark and very thick feel, very moody. Something that John and Flea were very proud of early on in the writing process. And it fought for its place on the record. In the end, the finished song, once mixed, was so strong that we decided to put it third on our record, because we felt that it really needed to be flaunted early on, and not kind of hard to find at the end of the record. We want people to know that, this is who we are.
This is a Place is another one of those ones where Philippe's playing the same bass line throughout the whole song, and the thing that's changing is the guitar part and the drums. Me and Chad sort of doing dynamic things along with each other while the bass is playing the same thing throughout the song. He turns on the fuzz tone pedal at one point when we get really loud, but the bass line stays the same throughout the whole song, and the guitar and the vocals and things, and just the intensity that's changing around it. It's a fun little exercise. I mean, I could do it forever with Flea for him, because the bass lines, he has this power of playing these bass lines that can be so hypnotic that you just get it. They send you into a trance, and I just love playing around with that with my guitar. Just turning the bass line inside out through my guitar playing.
Dosed. Well, what can I say about Dosed besides that when I first played it for a friend of mine, she said, "Oh, the girls are gonna really like this one," and I'd have to say that the feminine, girly part of myself likes it very much.
Dosed, which is also, maybe I shouldn't tell you all these names that they were before they were, but this one came from a loop that John played from. I'd come into rehearsal a few times, and John liked to get there early, and he has this special box that he steps on and his guitar goes into, that he can record 3 different guitar parts at once and then play them back all at once. And sort of an organic way of overdubbing. And that started that particular number. And that was the idea behind that. And then there's just this very beautiful, big Beatlesque chorus. It's really fun to play. That's one of my favorite songs on the record. And it should be interesting to play live. Midnight at the Oasis. Put your camel to bed. Hey, how you doing out there? I think that Midnight is really one of my particularly favorite numbers. It was really one that was, for some reason, was difficult to get down to record because it's such a mood and such a vibe, and it really has to grow in dynamics. But it's a beautiful song, and I love the orchestration behind it. And so, again, a new element for us, adding orchestra and strings. And I really think it serves the song well. It has those parts, and it really takes it to another level. And I'm really proud of that particular number. I think that's something that everybody should enjoy. All kids from all ages, from 6 to 60.
Midnight was one of the last songs that we recorded. We had recorded all the 27 songs or so that we had recorded for the album, and at the last second, Anthony pulled out this cassette of this song that was one of the last things that we had come up with at rehearsals. And at that moment, the song just blew my mind. I just thought it was one of my favorite things, and it also had that extra fresh quality of we'd barely ever played it. So it really took a big, and also I at a certain point I didn't know if it was actually going to make it to the album, but when the strings and stuff were put on it, and when Anthony had done his vocal to it and stuff, it really came up a notch where it absolutely had to be on the album. We were recording the orchestra. There was about 41-piece orchestra in this big giant room, and I was mostly sitting in the control booth with Rick Rubin and Flea, listening to it so I could hear it with the music. But during one take, I I decided to just sit out there in the room and just hear what it sounded like in the room, to hear the 41 people playing at the same time. So when I was sitting there, I couldn't hear the track that they were playing against. And when I heard them playing along with the chorus of the song, it hit me that what I was hearing right there would make a great intro to the song. So I ran and told everybody that I thought that would be a good idea, and it ended up being a good idea. It was also one of the first things that I wrote. I remember I had just gotten back from doing a little tour of playing my own songs, and I came back getting ready to really put all my focus and energy into the Chili Peppers. I was listening to the Smiths a lot, and the whole time we were making the record, and I just remember waking up one morning and writing that song. As a guitar part, you know. Flea added the melodica to it while we were recording it, and I thought that really added a nice dimension to the song.
Born from a jam. You know, everyone in this band has a very wide variety of musical tastes. We listen to everything. We play everything. And this came around and sat around. It was an early song, but it sort of stood the test of time. And when other songs got cut away, this one kept finding a place. It was one of the last songs that I sang in the studio. It was the second to the last song that I finished the lyrics for. It's got kind of a specifically ska kind of a groove to it. But, you know, as is seen by the Red Hot Chili Peppers, Flea plays melodica on this song, which really gives it that extra touch that it needed to sound good for our record. You know, it's one of the more up-tempo songs on this record, so we wanted it around for that reason also. That's it. That's all I can say about On Mercury. I know one thing about the Zephyr song. Its working title was Coltrane, and I have no idea why. We love John Coltrane, but it really doesn't sound a lot like John Coltrane. Another strange songwriting experience for us, only because when, you know, the verses have kind of this weird melodic, you know, almost syncopated, funky flow to them. And the chorus is just wide open. It's a wide open canvas. And what I wanted to sing on it shocked Flea. I sang him my part when I heard them play that music. And he said, "Wow, you are really going for something different these days." And I said, "Yeah, do you like it?" And he said, "I love it. It's just, I would have never expected it from you." And I thought, cool, I got Flea with the unexpected. And, you know, to me, it's a dreamy affair. It's a loving affair. It's a flirtatious, you know, sort of in the womb of universal love kind of a feeling. And, you know, it paints a picture. It paints a picture of being electrified by wind and romance.
Zephyr Song's another song that started from a jam when we were just trying to find new ways to get inspired, to have, you know, new ways to come up with music. And John brought in his sampler, and we just jammed to that groove at the very beginning that you hear in the song. Is a sampled drum beat that John had at home, and he brought in, and we just started jamming on that. And that's really was the beginnings of that particular number. I think it has a beautiful melody in the chorus, and Anthony really did a great job singing that one. And it was a bit of a challenge to record because we don't really record with sequencers or click tracks or samplers, and so from a drumming standpoint, I had to be very disciplined in order to make it feel good, but also stay with the sampler. So That's another new element that we've added to our little combo called the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Minor Thing is a song, I think it's about minor league baseball players. It's the girls that they meet down there in the old minor leagues and the grapefruit leagues. They say, hey, baby, you're a minor thing.
He fought for it to get it on the record. It almost didn't get on the record because we recorded too many songs for the record. It rocks out. It also has a really cool orchestration bit at the end. It's the song that our assistant engineer Josh thought would be our big breakthrough smash, which made us all laugh because it seemed so kind of obscure to us. But I don't know. I'm glad we have it. We need that kind of energy on the record also because it rocks pretty hard. Was a song Lost in Space. It was on a jam tape that I was listening to from our early rehearsals. And I was listening to it in my car as I was driving through LA, and I heard it and I started just singing along with it, whatever came to my head. And I liked my part, what I found. So I went into rehearsal the next day and I said, do you guys remember this song? It went like this. And they said no. And I said, well, it's because it was months ago and it was just one jam out of a million. And I played them some scratched up tape and I said, well, this is what I sing on it. I want to work on it. So we wrote a song behind that, got into the studio, tried to record it. It sounded boring. John put down the guitar and walked over to the organ and played his part on the organ rather than on the guitar. It sounded great, and we recorded it like that. And then he put some guitar overdubs, but it's one of the only times we've ever written a song and then, changed instrumentation like that at the last minute. And, it also celebrates life and, the experience of giving while you're in this life, and, how you should do that every day because you never know when that opportunity won't be there again.
Tear. What's really called Tear. Tear is something that is really exciting, and it's a balls out rock song guaranteed to burn your brains out and torch your eyeballs. Get ready for this one.
Introduced initially by John. He came in one day rather furious and passionate with some sort of weird been up all night energy, and he demanded that he play us what he had been working on. And he said, listen to this, and he just almost looked down at the ground and proceeded to assault his guitar with these chords, just sort of playing him until his fingers were shredding, quite literally. And it was just so powerful and compelling, and I wasn't quite sure why he was so angry about it because it was utterly beautiful music, but something possessed him, and he kind of wanted to, whip us with this music he had written. And of course, we have a lot of respect for him, as we do all of ourselves, and we went to work on it, and we developed it into a very unusual arrangement because it happens ABC, the parts, nothing repeats. There is no chorus, there is no verse, there is no bridge, there is no intro, outro, or anything like that. It's just 3 sections that we piece together. And, it's about the cycle of life also, but it's specifically about a friend of ours, Gloria Scott, who died last year, and just what an impact she had on the world around her while she was around. And it's kind of a goodbye song to her.
This song was originally entitled Epic because it had different parts, and it's a longer number, and it's got some interesting dynamic changes. I love the sounds that John has at the beginning with the guitars, and remember when we were recording it, Flea and I have to creep in and start from pianissimo, not PMSing, pianissimo. I don't know. How do you say that? Yeah. With a little help from my friends, and all the way to forte, and it's a gradual, sort of the way that My Sweet Lord sneaks in with the drums. They just kind of are played with expertise beyond my own belief. I can't believe I actually did that, and it has a really moody feel to it, and then of course when it breaks into the acoustic part, it's very exciting and has just a really beautiful story that Anthony tells in that, and it's another song that I think that we're breaking new ground for the Chili Peppers, and another live number that's very exciting to play. John is standing there with a acoustic guitar on a stand, and he looks like Steve Howe from Yes, which I'm sure he really likes.
For the record, and I was learning a lot of Charles Mingus songs and Beatles songs, and learning the chord changes to a lot of songs by those two people. I was pretty much every day just focusing on those two people for a few months, and so it got me thinking of chords in a much different way. And I think there was another song that I'd written for myself, and I thought I should write something like that for the Chili Peppers. so I could die. That's what I Could Die For You was.
This is Paris. The questions are coming from Gail, even though it may seem like the radio's asking them. The subject is I Could Die For You. The expounder upon the subject is Anthony Kiedis. That's me, from the Red Hot Chili Peppers. I Could Die For You was... The song started as a few guitar chords, which we quite simply entitled as a working title, The Most Beautiful Chords Ever, or something to that effect. The most insanely wonderful chords ever written, is what Flea and I used to call it. And all I knew is that it was going to be a song one day, and I wasn't sure what it was going to be about, who it was going to be about, but I knew that it was painfully emotional, and that somewhere in there was vocal melody and rhythm and arrangement for me to find, and it took me a long time to find it. Like, I just always had it on my back burners. That's going to be the prettiest song on the record. That's going to be the prettiest song on the record. But it took me months to kind of find the words and to find exactly what I was going to sing. Like, I was humming different bits and pieces, but one day it all kind of came together, and I always told John that I had this confidence that I knew I was going to find my thing. And he's like, I know. I hear you humming it all the time. And I said, yeah, but that's just humming. And he said, well, that's it. Just sing what you're humming. And eventually I did. And I don't know, it's a very important song to me, a very real song to me. It's a song that every time that we've played it so far, I've remembered exactly how I was feeling when I wrote the words. And I think that's a good sign.
Don't Forget Me is a song. It's a song. Just thought I'd let you know that. Don't Forget Me is a song that it rocks onwards. Let it rock onwards. It's once again it's a song that is simple, and it's in that it has a very simple musical theme that runs through the whole thing. But it's a very dynamic song, and Anthony gets down to some serious hollering and erect nipple shaking.
Don't Forget Me, a song that where the origin of the song came from Flea just playing one bass line over and over and over for a long period of time, and I would make up, I'd do one guitar part, then do another guitar part, then do another guitar part, and just do a bunch, and keep changing the dynamics of it, and keep changing everything around the bass line to where when you're hearing the whole thing going on, you would never realize that there's just one bass line going on throughout the whole thing. But there's the Talking Heads album, Remain in Light, which that whole album is, every song is just one bass line and one drum part for the whole song. But the songs go through so many changes that unless it's pointed out to you, you don't realize that there's just one bass line that stays consistent throughout the whole song, because the song has choruses and verses and bridges and all kinds of vocal parts going on. And so we have a couple of examples of that on our record. This is one of them. Warm Tape was the only song on the album that was written at rehearsals using the synthesizer. The words Warm Tape came from the name of one of the sounds that I used to combine with a synthesizer sound. Originally it had a kind of a punk rock part that went out of the verse into a downstroke kind of punk thing. And Rick Rubin didn't think that it was as good as the rest of the song, and eventually I wrote something that I thought was... I kept trying to write parts for that song on guitar. Everybody thought it would be a good idea to have the synthesizer at the verse and guitar at the chorus, and I kept trying to write things, and I just... Finally, something was written that did seem better than the punk rock part, and it got put away. Even though I've heard people say that song is 80s influenced or something, to me it doesn't seem that at all. It seems really 60s influenced.
Universally speaking, very favorite songs on the record. It's the song that just makes me cry when I sing it, and makes me cry when I hear it back in the studio. I feel totally proud of this song. This song expresses exactly what it's supposed to. It makes me feel completely in love with life and with this band and with the human experience. And so far it's turned out to be one of my two favorite songs to play live. And a very good friend of mine, when he heard it in the studio, said, "This is the best song you've ever written." And that's saying something. So let it roll.
We've had for a while, and it started out from a bass line that Flea started jamming out at the end of a rehearsal one day. And I remember we just all, again, something that happens, we have this musical telepathy. We just all started falling in and playing something, and it just felt right off the bat. Came really easy, really naturally. And we played that on a couple festivals last summer, and we've sort of honed it down and turned it into what I think will be a future classic Red Hot Chili Pepper song.
France. I'm sitting here with Gail Fine. We're talking about the song Cabron. Beautifully bizarre tune, which was born out of a hotel room at the Chateau, where John came up with this really interesting and unusual instrumental guitar piece that he called me up and he said, I want you to come over here and hear this guitar piece. I took a tape of it and just started singing along with this weird-ass guitar music. And I don't know, we both have a love for doo-wop and, kind of a love for Mexican soul living in LA. And the next thing you know, we had this weird Mexican doo-wop guitar extravaganza. And it took a while to formulate into the actual arrangement that it's in today in terms of instrumentation. But, it's a song of many meanings. It's the local bully, but it's also the global bully. And in the end, it boils down to just loving life and wanting to get along even with your enemies so that they no longer are your enemies.
that has a feeling that I really enjoy very much, and I get to play the stand-up bass on it, even though I didn't do that in the studio, but that's what I do now. And if you play the stand-up bass and you're naked, you feel the big wooden bass vibrating up against your body, and it makes you happy. Is a song that is a very dynamic song. It's got a bunch of different pieces and feelings to it, and if you really want, you could slam your head around like a wild watermelon rolling down a hill, or you could moodily stare into a dark corner.
To this drum and bass club that we had in LA called Concrete Jungle while we were writing the record, and a lot of the time I would bring the energy that I'd experienced there the night before to rehearsal the next day. And while a lot of these jams just ended up being just jams forever, by the way, it was something where I felt like that I was feeling when we were writing that song, the same energy that I had been experiencing at the drum and bass club the night before. And there's a lot of fun jumping around and dancing at rehearsal, and that's what this song reminds me of.